Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source Podcast. I'm your host, Jace. Returning to the Spawn Daily. Been a little bit, but glad to get back on the horse. Last time we left Spawn, he had finally vanquished Billy Kincaid, at least for now. Billy's no longer on the earthly plane, no longer taking over souls, no longer growing in power, but a lot of people died in the process. We saw the trauma that Twitch Williams had to deal um, with killing the cop that was most recently the host for Billy Kincaid, who had really done nothing wrong, but Twitch, by killing him, not only defeated Billy Kincaid, but he stopped that police officer's soul from being permanently bound to Billy. But the guy had just had a baby, didn't deserve to be killed. So, yeah, a lot of trauma. And we saw last issue, as we'll see in the recap here, as let me go ahead and share the book with you guys. But yeah, we saw that Cogliostro had last issue tried to reason with Spawn, but wasn't unable to, which led Spawn to what might be an impulsive decision. I guess we'll see as we talk about it in upcoming issues. So we'll see how that all plays out. But just a quick reminder what we're doing here, Spawn Daily. We're reading every issue of Spawn to get caught up to modern times. It hasn't been daily for a while. I apologize for that. Just a lot of stuff going on. But hopefully, as I said, getting back on the horse, recording a lot of episodes this weekend. So should have a few out for you over the next week. Um, the other thing that we do, and we didn't do this in the beginning, I didn't do this in the beginning, was cover the ancillary series. So mini series, one shots, ongoings, all that that sort of tie-in, Sam and Twitch, Curse of the Spawn, that sort of thing. Didn't know how important they were because I think I stopped reading Spawn with issue maybe 25 or 40 or something. Anyway, well below 100 back in the day when I collected it. So when we kicked this off and started reading just the main series, what we found was there were so many events that happened in other books that the consequences of those events and actions and character choices really impacted what was happening in the main story. So found this great reading order by a gentleman named Blake Whitlow. There's a link to that reading order in the show notes. It's by far the best one out there. I've looked, trust me. But basically what will happen is we'll cover all that ancillary stuff. We'll cover all the stuff that ties into Spawn. But when it's a series that's not the main series, we may have more than one issue per episode. But when it comes to the main series, we'll always do one issue per episode just so we can have a little more time to dissect what's going on. So hopefully we're going to get caught up sometime next year to all the new stuff as it's coming out, and then we can just cover the books as they drop. So anyway, like I said, let me go ahead and share the book with you so you guys can see what's going on. We have Spawn number 87. As we turn inside, we see the credits and the quick recap. So the plot is by Brian Holguin and Todd McFarlane, story by Holguin, pencils by Greg Capullo, inks by Danny Miki, copy, editing, and lettering by Tom Orzechowski. And you see that little blurb there, the Spawn 86 summary, which we covered in the last episode. But again, that was a while back. So let me remind you, Cog unable to reason with Spawn. Spawn ends up fighting the ghost of Al Simmons, has like a heart-to-heart, and finally kind of lets go of Al Simmons, tries to let go of his past, and goes back to the alley, kicks everybody out, all his supposed friends, and announces to Cog that he's quitting, right? He's tired of the way the rules are being applied to him. He's no longer going to play by the rules set up by Malbolgia. He's done. He's quitting as Spawn. So what exactly that means, will he be able to do that? That's what we're going to be exploring. But before we get to that, this is a bit of an interlude episode, which I suppose they did to kind of build up suspense and tension with that cliffhanger ending last time with Spawn quitting. So this actually starts off with a character narrating, a character that we've seen a few times before, who's already undergone a little bit of an evolution and certainly has a bit of an arc in this issue, and that's Ethan Crone, who's this writer who came to New York to write about the urban myths, specifically the urban myths of Spawn. When he first shows up, he's very cynical, he's very arrogant, he's very kind of over the top, and you can kind of get a sense of that in his writing. You know, he really feels he's above not only New York as a city, but above a lot of its inhabitants, above a lot of its citizens. Just feels like he's better than most, and more worldly and more experienced, if you will. So he starts off and he's talking about how New York is a city built on ghosts. You close your eyes and you can see them. The immigrants that had come in on Ellis Island, all the bankers that took their life on the day that the stock market crashed. I think it's called Black Monday or Black Friday or whatever it was. Black Monday, I think, in 1929, that they all, jumped off skyscrapers. He talks about the Indians that were the laborers that helped build the skyscrapers in Manhattan that, were nimble and would walk around on all that high steel, those iron beams and what have you. And any that fell, they just kind of left them and made them as part of the building, put them in the foundation, what have you. And then he talks about the mobs and all their killings that they did and bodies that disappeared. And he says, by now, every inch of the city must be haunted, but there's only one ghost that haunts me, and that's Spawn, right? For years, he's heard rumors and innuendo about this, this cloaked avenger called Spawn. And he wonders if it's just kind of a sign of the times. You got to remember that this book came out in 1999, so right before the whole 2000 craze, Y2K. And so he wonders if it's something called Millennium Fever, that's people are creating this rumor of Spawn. And so he came there and he came to New York and he's exploring this, right? He's trying to find out what's going on. And over time, he's sort of started to obsess about this, and it's really interesting. And maybe it's just that he's used to being able to find answers, and because he can't, he's really struggling here. So he's talking about a mysterious fire that blazed through an area of the Bowery called Rat City. We know that's kind of the place where Spawn makes his home base. And he talks about how Ethan Crone talks about how there's been so many strange occurrences that have happened in that area, and the area has become known as Spawn Alley. So it's kind of become the focus for Ethan Crone on where to go and look for Spawn. So as he's ruminating, as he's thinking about what he's going to do next, he gets a phone call. We only get his side of the conversation. It's clear that it's his publisher who's calling and asking, hey, when's the book going to be ready? And he says, yeah, I'm working on it. No, it'll be ready when it's ready. And then obviously they say something about his advance, like, hey, we're going to take your advance back or whatever. He's like, how dare you mention my advance? Listen to me. I know you're an editor, so you have no soul, but, I will not. And then the guy cuts him off. Obviously, he's like, obsessed. I'm not obsessed. I'm not having this conversation. Don't interrupt me. I'm hanging up. Don't even bother me in the future. Anything you need to talk to me about, go through my agent. You'll get it when you'll get it. And he slams the phone down and says, I'm not obsessed. And it's kind of trying to convince himself, because it's clear that he actually is obsessed. And so on the next page, we get some video of the interviews that he's done, trying to get some more information about Spawn. I mean, clearly he wants to meet Spawn himself. So he's trying to find out, where can I find this guy? Who is this guy? Where did he come from? And so, yeah, he goes out on the street and probably to that area, Rat City, and he's interviewing these different people. And some of them are saying, yeah, I've heard of Spawn. It's kind of the old homeless guys, kind of depressing. So yeah, Spawn, he was in a war or something, and they gave him superpowers like weird mutation or what have you. And I saw him a couple times, but I never talked to him. Just seemed like somebody who appreciates his privacy. Hey, are you going to pay us for this? These young kids want to know. He talks to another guy who's kind of a street musician. And the guy's like, you're going to make me famous. Hey, Spawn, yeah, you don't want to go there, man. That's messing with some deep, dark stuff. My uncle was like a voodoo priest, and my granddaddy or whatever, he was a magic man down in New Orleans, and he knew about all that stuff. And you don't want to be messing with that. Demons will come pouring out of their mouths, and insects and lizards and snakes. And it's funny because the guy's talking about things that we've actually seen happen in Spawn, whether it be the freak or whomever. And he's like, look, man, just be righteous, make the right choices, because it only takes one moment of weakness and the devil will get his hands in you. Just, keep your eyes open. So he doesn't really offer much to Ethan Crone in the way of telling about Spawn. And then next up, we have these these three kind of drunks, I guess you'd say. And they're like, oh yeah, we know Spawn, and they start reenacting a fight that that they saw Spawn have one time and against some robot dude or whatever. So maybe it was Overkill that these guys saw him fighting against. He's like, yeah, those were the days before he got all morose and moody. But yeah, we kind of miss him. Whatever, not sure what happened to him. Whatever happened to that freaky monkey that was around as well. They're obviously referring to Cygor. And then as Ethan is getting this interview with them, one of the guys pukes on his shoes. And so again, not having much luck getting information about Spawn, but then perhaps as luck would have it, he runs into Bobby. Now Bobby knows actually a lot, but he's not really in the best place to actually provide Ethan Crone with information. And then the other part of it you wonder about is, it's not like Bobby's actually going to betray Spawn and actually tell him about the, things that he knows. But I mean, he's Bobby, and one thing that we know about him is how sensitive he is, right? And we saw last issue when Spawn was kicking everybody out of the alley, and Bobby was trying to talk to him. He was calling him Al, and Spawn blew up at him. I'm Spawn. Don't ever say that name to me again. Get out of here. And Bobby's really hurt, and that comes across here as he's talking to Ethan Crone. But the other thing about this conversation that Bobby has with Ethan Crone is he's talking to Ethan. He kind of makes this assumption that Ethan sort of knows more about Spawn than he actually does. Because there's actually a lot of information that Bobby could give Ethan Crone that would be helpful to Ethan. But again, if Bobby's thinking he's not going to betray Al, but again, he just makes that assumption. He would give more things away, I think Bobby would, without realizing it inadvertently, if he wasn't so, in his head. And he says, I thought I was actually friends with him. I know it sounds weird. I remember how, when he first came here and started staying here, there were other guys that wanted him to leave, but I always saw him just as one of us. He lost his home, he lost his family, he lost his life. He's just trying to make the best out of a bad situation like we all are. And I never thought he would just up and leave like that. But you could tell that something happened. And I don't blame him. It's just, it's hard. I lost my other friend Bootsy recently. It turned out to be an angel. It's like nobody's looking out for Bobby these days. So, I don't know what to think. And he's like, but let me tell you about Spawn. I don't think anybody else understands. Well, to tell you the truth, you got to feel like he's got nothing in this world. He's lost everything, and your days are long, and night seems like it takes forever to get here, and things just get bleak, and all you have is your friendship. And I thought we had a connection, and to have that gone, yeah, it's just it's terrible. It hurts. And then Bobby says, I know I'm rambling. Please, can I just stop now? So I'm sure Ethan realizes that this guy has some issues. So how can he even take anything that he says? He's speaking like he knows Spawn, but the things he's saying, Ethan doesn't have any context for. And Bobby's right. He is rambling, so to speak. I mean, he's mentioning his best friend, Bootsy and Angel and whatever. And so in a way, Ethan's got to be thinking, is this guy just like completely mentally deranged? And, I can't take anything that he's saying at face value. Again, he doesn't know what to think. So he goes to talk to Sam and Twitch, and this is what's interesting, because he mentions ex-cops, and they say, actually, we're ex-cops now, apparently with their role in the Billy Kincaid case. Sam and Twitch are being hired back on the force. That will be covered in the Sam and Twitch miniseries, which we'll be talking about in a few episodes here. But they're of all the people that Ethan Crone talks to, they're the ones that are most aware that they shouldn't say anything, and try to convince Ethan Crone that Spawn isn't even real. So he asks about Spawn, and they say what? Because he says actually Hellspawn, and Sam, he does a great job of playing this off. Give him some credit for acting. He's like, Health Spa. You know anything about Health Spa? Oh wait, Hellspawn. So it's kind of funny. They're really, without realizing it, without Ethan Crone realizing it, they're really having some fun with him. Say, yeah, Urban Boogeyman, Spawn the Undead. Yeah, never heard of him. And then Twitch brings up a Cape Marauder that they do know about, and they kind of relate the story of man and woman, boyfriend, girlfriend, who did this role play stuff where the guy used to dress up as Batman, tie the woman up, and they she was yelling and screaming bloody murder. The neighbors called the cops. Cops showed up. They go to arrest the guy, and she's like, no, 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 don't arrest him. It turns out they would role play in the bedroom, what have you, kind of this kinky dress up game. And the guy like leaped off the dresser to land on the woman when she was tied up on the bed. He's dressed like Batman, hits his head on the fan, um, knocks himself out. So they're just laughing and cracking up. Whether that actually happened or not, I don't know. It's pretty funny, but it gives them the ability to play off Ethan Crone and convince him that nothing happened. But in all this research, somehow Ethan Crone has put together or gotten some information about a connection between Spawn and Al Simmons, because he actually goes to the Simmons household. And maybe it's just that he's actually heard of Wanda and Terry. We know Cyan was kidnapped at one point. Um, and so her name may have come up when he was talking to some of these people or what have you. But he goes there and he's heard Spawn referred to as Al, at least by one person, at least by Bobby. And, Wanda's ex-husband or former husband, late husband is Al. So she answers the door. He says, sorry, I hate to bother you. I was wondering if I can ask you some questions. I understand you had contact with somebody named Spawn. Your ex-husband or your late husband, your first husband, his name was Al Simmons, right? She slams the door in his face. He's kind of standing there. Terry comes to the door, opens it, says, hey, who do you think you are, upsetting my wife like that? And Ethan's like, I just want to ask a few questions. And he says, you know what? I'd greatly appreciate it if you got the hell off my property before I stick my foot up your ass. There's your quote. So, I mean, Terry does know that Al and Spawn are one and the same. So not only does he not wanted to know, he doesn't want her upset, but he's not going to betray his friend either. So Ethan's sort of stuck at this point. Everybody's denying seeing Spawn, or if they have, they saw him a long time ago, and their descriptions of him vary, and their descriptions of his characterization all vary. So he's got to wonder, man, am I onto something or not? It's just not going well. Then he talks to a cab driver who supposedly has proof. He points to a giant dent on the hood of his car, saying, yeah, out of nowhere, I had this fare. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and something lands on my hood, and it sounded like a bomb went off. And it was this guy, Spawn. And, he rolled off my hood, and he just got on with his day. I never saw him again. I still have no idea what it is, but I know he was real, and I know he was heavy, and I know my insurance wouldn't cover the damage. So again, Ethan, it's like these anecdotal or tangential encounters, right? He still has no proof. I mean, anything could have landed on this guy's car. There's no evidence that it was actually Spawn. And then we get this, it looks like Tony Stark, for lack of a better description. This guy saying, I understand you're inquiring about this mysterious urban avenger, Hellspawn. It's fascinating. Have you had any success? I can't be of any help to you. I don't have any experience with such things, dark alleys and blood oaths and magic and what have you. Just curious to know the results of your research. And, I realize you have a publisher already, and I can appreciate a contract's a contract, but, if you turn up anything, let's just say I'm in a position to discuss a generous bargain, if you will. But, it won't be necessary for me to give you any contact information. I'll know how to get in touch with you when the time is right. And so you got to wonder, wait, who's this guy? Because it even says at the top, interview unknown. So when I first read it, I really did think, I was like, is this Brian Holguin, Todd McFarlane, whatever, poking some fun at Tony Stark? He says he's in a position to pay Ethan a lot for any information Ethan finds. That would definitely be a Tony thing to do. And he definitely looks like Tony Stark. But it turns out he is someone else, someone far more important, someone far more connected to the Spawn universe that we'll be talking about in some upcoming issues as well. So a little tease for you. So those are the interviews that Ethan conducts, at least the ones that were shown. Obviously a bit of a disappointment. He doesn't get any concrete proof. So he decides to hire a film crew and go get proof for himself. So they show up late at night in Rat City, in Spawn Alley, and the camera crew's like, dude, you didn't tell us we were going to be spending the night in a hellhole. And Ethan's like, for the obscene amount of money I'm paying you, you'll do whatever I ask and go wherever I tell you to go. Now, let's get to work. I want to start by getting some coverage of the alley itself. And they're like, I don't know, man, this place is really giving you the creeps. And then a rat goes scurrying across one of their feet. And these guys freak out. Like, are they not? They must not be from New York. I mean, New Yorker sees a rat. It's like no big deal, whatever. But these guys just take off. And Ethan's yelling after them as they go running off. He's like, we have a contract there. Yeah, take it up with the union, man. We're not about um, to hang out and get bitten by rats and attacked by muggers and God knows what in this alley. So uh, you know, give Ethan some credit that he takes it upon himself to explore, and he's recording his thoughts with a recorder, talking about he's going to do some general reconnaissance. The area is much larger than he expected, and he's no expert. But he can see the effects of the fire and what have you. And it's smelly and reeks of garbage, and it's definitely knows it's going to be a long night. Um, and so around 3:15, he's drank the last of his coffee, he's smoking a cigarette. Um, and he's talking about just being alone in the dark, how every sound, every shift, every little rustle uh, gets your adrenaline going, and he just not sure what he's going to find, but he's committed to staying until sunrise, and he kind of taunting whoever might be listening, saying, come out, wherever you are." And he hears a thumping, and you can see at the bottom panel there, he's kind of like, what the hell was that? A little bit shocked, a little bit scared, a little bit startled. Um, and he hears some thumping against the boards. This is one of those warehouses that's boarded up. He's kind of narrating because, again, he's recording this in case anything happens. It's probably just a loose board in the wind, but I'm going to follow this noise to the heart of the maze, if you will. And it seems like it's the remnants of a structure. Everything seems charred, and wow, these look like bones. And where he's actually gotten to is the center of Rat City, where that fire first started, the fire that we saw last issue when Spawn declared that he was quitting. He tore apart his throne that he had built, and called up hellfire to kind of burn everything. And that's where this noise is coming from that Ethan Crone is hearing. So he thinks it's just a board, an old boarded up window. He tried to peek through. A bunch of bats come flying out and knock him over. And he's like, son of a bitch. Give this guy some credit. Maybe not for courage, because he's not exactly showing a lot of courage by not being frightened. He's very frightened in these situations that he's finding himself in, unknown, dark, uh, no one to come to the rescue if something is to happen. But at least he's not running away like the camera crew did. Um, and I think that speaks to the nature of the obsession that he has, where he, really wants to find out if Spawn is real or not. Um, and then we see there's a shadow on the wall, and he says, no, please, for the love of God, what are you? The shadow is not really defined well enough to say for sure that he's seen Spawn, that Spawn is kind of scaring this guy straight, so to speak. But we do see some chains, and the kind of the curly cues, I guess I'll call them, of the shadow do sort of evoke the fact that it could be Spawn, but again, it doesn't look super humanoid. But it's interesting because if it is Spawn confronting Ethan Crone, dude, isn't this what you've been looking for all along? I was just talking about how the obsession has given him courage to hang out even in the midst of these frightening events that are happening. But then possibly when he gets a chance to see Spawn, he freaks out and he loses it. Maybe it's just after effects of everything he's put up with throughout the night. Maybe it's because he dropped his flashlight. Maybe Spawn is backlit in such a way that he looks even more terrifying than he does normally. Um, but it's clear that Ethan Crone sees something, or at least thinks he sees something. And as he's laying there on the ground, he's like closing his eyes. He's like, I want to die. He doesn't actually want to see maybe another case of be careful what you wish for, right? Because as much as he thought that he wanted to see Spawn, when he's actually confronted with Spawn, at least we think it's Spawn, it's kind of intimated that it's Spawn. He closes his eyes, he covers his head. He just wants to die. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So the next day, he's conducting one last interview. The light, the sun is starting to rise and starting to get light, so probably a lot easier for him to deal with this again. He's like, I gotta know. I don't even care about my book anymore or the money. I just gotta know for me. Something going on. I saw it. Um, Something happened in those alleys, and I just have to know. I won't be able to sleep until I know. I'm begging you, just tell me the truth. That's all I want. Tell me the truth about Spawn. And we see that he's actually talking to Cagliostro. Again, somebody much like Bobby who could tell him the truth, who could actually let him know what's going on. But he's like, the truth? Well, truth is a funny thing, and you're probably not going to like it. But the truth is there is no Spawn, and there never was. Just some old fools telling stories, around the bonfire to pass the time, having a little drinky drinky. You're just chasing a shadow, Mr. Crone. That's the real truth. Um, and you wonder if Ethan buys it because, again, he saw something, but he was too frightened, too scared in that moment to really take a good look or perhaps talk to Spawn. You wonder, would Spawn have even talked to him? Al's got to be aware this guy's been poking around asking questions. Um, so with that, Crone has to be content that the information he's gathered means nothing. Um, as Cog walks away and says, let it go. There's no answers here for you. And Ethan Crone says, the hell with it. And he drops his book and walks away. And we see his book starts to burn with some green flames. So clearly somebody doesn't want any of the information Crone gathered to be shared with anybody else. As we see some graffiti saying these alleys belong to Spawn, and we see Spawn's eyes in the background there. Um, and Crone's, I suppose, last entry to the book, or last entry into his computer anyway, says the city was built on ghosts, like he was talking about in the beginning on page 1. But maybe some of those ghosts deserve to be left in peace. And we're told next issue at the crossroads. So interesting story, a bit of an interlude again. Don't know how necessary it was. Clearly, this Ethan Crone was hired to come to the city to write about Spawn, got a book deal, what have you, leaves without writing anything. Um, and maybe leaves with the knowledge of, yeah, some things are better left alone, right? So interesting issue. I did enjoy it. Gave a lot of context for Ethan. I mean, if you just read his story, he does, as I said, go through quite the evolution because at first he's very arrogant. He's very condescending. He's very, lofty in his ideals of how much better he is than the common man. But he gets scared just like anybody else. And ends up leaving without getting any concrete proof or belief there's Spawn. And yeah, he's probably thinking, I'm better off leaving this alone, not writing about this, not going through the trouble. So the other thing about this, not a ton of action here, but fantastic art from Capullo throughout, right? Like, look at Ethan's glasses here when he's interviewing Cagliostro. Before Cagliostro even shows up in, the bottom row of panels, we know it's Cagliostro because you can see the reflection in Ethan's glasses. And also just, I mean, I talk about evolution of the character, even his visual look, even in this issue itself. Like, go and look at the early pages where Ethan is talking to the editor who calls him on the phone, right? And he's so arrogantly speaking to him on the phone, saying, how dare you bother me? I'm not obsessed. Talk to me through my agent. Just very full of himself, very authoritative, very assertive. And you compare that to kind of the final pages here, where he's frightened in the alley, even where he's asking Cagliostro, he's begging Cagliostro, saying, I don't care about the book anymore. I don't care, about the money. I just have to know for myself. I mean, it almost looks like a different person. I mean, clearly recognizable as Ethan Crone, but what a fantastic job with body language and facial expressions and what have you from Greg Capullo to take that assertive, angry, arrogant guy that we had in the early issues and transform him into that. And in the middle pages, middle part of the issue here, when we see him where he's a bit more relaxed, he's a little tentative as he's waiting throughout the night. But the curiosity that shows on his face is really interesting as well. So again, give a lot of credit to Capullo for, despite the fact that this isn't the most action-packed issue, with keeping it interesting. And, he does get a bit of a break because we do have quite a few of those interview pages, if you will, where he just has to draw somebody's head and shoulders, basically. Um, but again, even though it might not be, a lot to draw, he still puts a ton of detail. He's not taking any shortcuts here. He still puts a ton of detail in the characterization of these characters as they're relating the story in the background to kind of just tell a very well-paced story in terms of the transitions from panel to panel to give us an idea of kind of the way the conversations go, the flow of the conversations, or the flow of the interviews that Ethan Crone does. So it's masterfully done by Capullo here. I mean, no more so illustrated than when Bobby is talking, right? Like, you see how hurt Bobby looks, you see the melancholy in his face, you see him turn away and in frustration. You see him start to tear up. You see him start to be overcome by emotion as he's talking about Spawn leaving. You see him block the camera because he doesn't want to be recorded anymore, as he's just had enough. Again, this could be sort of a boring issue visually because it is such a talking head issue, but Capullo, again, does such a fantastic job of keeping it interesting. Another great example when he's talking to the African-American musician with the dreads and what have you. I mean, it's just a fantastic job throughout by Capullo. Again, some of the pages, from the very first page where we've got a bunch of pictures or have seen a bunch of the snapshots, if you will, of Ethan Crone's apartment. Again, just telling a story in a very interesting way. I 100% admit it's not the most action-packed episode, but it is interesting. It is fun, and give credit to Capullo for just fantastic visual storytelling, great transitions from panel to panel, great emotion and body language and facial expressions. And I think we've seen the last of Ethan Crone, at least for quite a while. He didn't get the answer. In a way, he didn't get the answers that he wanted, but he did get answers in a lot of ways, right? People telling him, "Hey, man, leave it alone, move on with your life. You'll be much better off in the long run." So fascinating. And again, a choice from McFarlane and Holguin to not even really feature Spawn in this issue at all. Maybe we got a cameo of his shadow. We're not 100% sure, but it certainly seems that to have been the case. But a way to build tension after the cliffhanger of last issue where Spawn says, I quit. So we're actually going to pivot over to the last of the Curse of the Spawn issues in the series. Then we'll move over to Sam and Twitch, who are now back on the NYPD, as we saw mentioned in this particular issue. Then we'll get back to some of the issues of the regular Spawn. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Again, apologies that the break was a little bit extended, but hopefully moving forward, there will be no more breaks. As I said, I'm recording a bunch of episodes and getting them all in the can to hopefully get moving and get some momentum going on this again. So appreciate the support as always. Don't forget to subscribe, leave some comments on this video. Really appreciate the support, everybody. We finally hit the 500 subscriber mark, so now on to 1,000, and just looking to reach that threshold of watched hours that YouTube requires. So hopefully it can monetize and defray some of the costs of producing all these episodes. So again, appreciate the support, everybody. Thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you next time.